My name is Michael Schnürch. I'm an associate professor at the Institute of Applied Synthetic Chemistry at TU Wien, also known as Vienna University of Technology. And I'm the chair of the COST-Aktion CHAOS. CHAOS stands for CH activation in organic synthesis, and not because we are very chaotic action, even though sometimes it happens. But that's how science is. More important to explain is what COST actually is. COST is the Cooperation for Science and Technology, and it's the oldest European Union funding scheme for science, whereas it actually does not fund research, so it does not fund your materials, it does not fund your students, but it funds bringing researchers from all over Europe together so that they can develop new collaborations and together tackle more complex scientific problems actually. And that's especially very important for young researchers. And when I was still a few years younger and at the early stages of my career, I was searching actually for a cost action which would give me the opportunity to develop collaborations in my field. But unfortunately, there was no cost action on CH activation. So I just decided to try to start one on my own. And at a scientific conference where many of the community were present, I brought forward this idea and I got really great feedback. And quickly we found roughly 40 researchers who were interested in this action, and we started to prepare an application. We knew we had roughly 10% chance of success. That's the typical rate of funding at EU funding schemes, and still we tried it and we were amongst the lucky 10% ones. And in the end, we received the budget for our cost action. And the budget actually covers now networking activities, meaning bringing us together at meetings. We had our first meeting in Vienna in September 2016. And another important funding scheme is that it also funds so-called short-term scientific missions, where we can send our students to the laboratories of our collaboration partners, and there they can learn new techniques and work really tightly together on joint projects. And we started in the application phase with roughly 40 researchers. By now, we have grown to one of the largest cost actions actually. A typical large cost action is roughly 70 people. We have now 30 countries, European countries. We have 132 research groups. If you multiply that by roughly a factor of 5 to 8, what is the typical size of a research group? We have several hundreds, almost 1,000 brains basically in this action. We are also planning outreaching to the US and to Asia, where there are actually similar centers for CH activation existing. And how does such a cost action meeting work actually? You can compare it a little bit to a speed dating event where you actually find basically the partner which fits to your needs. You explain what your research is about, what your ideas are, what your future plans are, and what you actually would need to do this research more efficiently. And it's very likely, since we're bringing a lot of people together, that you will find at our meeting another researcher which just has this complementary expertise which is missing in your research portfolio, which can then help you to be more successful in your research, to tackle more complex scientific questions. You might now ask yourself, why do we actually need this collaboration? And I like to use there a comparison between sports teams actually. In a sports team, you have very specified players on specified positions. If you, for example, take a football team, you have a goalkeeper, you have defenders, you have midfielders, you have strikers. And you would not be very successful with your team if you would play with 11 goalkeepers or with 11 strikers. You need just on the right position the right player. And the same is true for science. Even though we are all chemists, we are all very specialized on certain parameters of our science nowadays. The times are over for quite a few decades where actually as a single person you could have a huge and tremendous impact in a field of science. You need people working together with you. And these people you find within a COST-Aktion. We had our first meeting this September, actually, September 2016 in Vienna, where we had more than 80 researchers present at once, and we also had such a speed dating event, and from that the first collaborations started. And in our next event in March, which will take place in Sofia in Bulgaria, we will further deepen this. And I can say from my experience it already worked very well for me. From the Vienna meeting I started 2 collaborations already, and I'm quite confident that at the next meeting even further collaborations will start.